The After-Death Journal of an American Philosopher, The Worldview of William James, by Jane Roberts, introduction by Seth, read by Martin John. 8. Views of the World from a Balcony Seat. Monday morning, March 21, 1977. In the universal drama, you might say that I'm still in the same theater of events, but I have moved from life's stage to the balcony, where as an observer I am removed from the action in which life's participators are involved. My status allows me a better view. I can look down, symbolically speaking, to see the actors coming in at one end of the stage, leaving at the other end, and I can also vaguely perceive other stages, both above and below. Besides this, it is apparent to me, though not to the actors, that on an adjacent level one stage leads to another, and that at death a new curtain rises. While not presently involved in a physical drama, certain privileges are also allowed me in that I can shout out my comments and suggestions, urge certain actors on, applaud and boo as rambunctiously as I please. Not being personally involved, I follow the plots, characters, and themes, and because of my privileged viewpoint, I can see where certain actions are leading, so that sometimes I call out in alarm, "Watch out!" or "Don't you see what will happen if you don't do something quickly?" Or, like a passionate theater-goer who impatiently stands up, stomping his feet, I might feel at least like shouting out my irritation at poorly read lines or inept performances. Perhaps most of all, however, the intricate patterns made by the generations become increasingly clear. The importance of each minute decision by the most minor actor with the smallest bit part will influence all of the other actions, both present, past, and future. For at one level, all of the actors hear all of the other lines, regardless of the time or place in which they are spoken, and all ad-lib in a simultaneous creativity so that the dramas change themselves constantly, all across the boards. I understand those issues even though my box seat is so far away from the stage that I only see the larger patterns of action, the greater motions that appear to me quite clearly. While I know from experience on the stage myself that these are unfocused and difficult to perceive. Still using our analogy, only special opera glasses would allow me to see the specifics sharply, and then these would be perceived through the lenses of my particular intent. That is, only a vital emotional yearning, a strong focus of desire, could bring given particulars into my inner range of vision. I do not mean to carry the analogy too far, yet my role and that of others in the balcony is like that of the drama critic, except that unlike many of that breed who were dilettantes in my time, we at least began at the bottom, being stagehands, prop directors, then actors, writers, producers. Finally, we move aside to study the overall productions, add our comments or criticisms, and, backed up by considerable experience, to make what permanent suggestions we feel will help. In those terms, there are many others in the balconies. A few of them are bored, for all of us here have inserted our lines into the productions long before. We see them pop up time and time again, read differently, reiterated with 1,000 various interpretations and used to further other cases, perhaps, than those we espoused. But to us is given the privilege of standing momentarily apart, watching how our life's actions began before our births and continue beyond our deaths. But more, of perceiving the ever spontaneous yet perfect order of the generations' interactions, seeing with considerable surprise how each birth and death is flawless in its timing, and how the most pariacal of lives is universal in its effects. Each barest whisper or muffled cry is heard everywhere. Such are the amazing acoustics of this giant theatre, which by its nature magnifies each sound and projects each thought outward, where it appears also elsewhere, translated into a different medium. It is as if one actor's spoken line were simultaneously transposed into a musical note in some vast, ever-continuing composition, into one original line or color or shape that was part of some massive, spectacular painting always in process, into the physical components of nature, trees, rocks, animals, and into a million other transformations which even from my position would be impossible to follow. Yet it is equally impossible not to attempt such a venture, and like the other balcony watchers, I am aware that my balcony has only one box seat, while behind me is a door leading into perhaps even vaster theatres. When I have learned all that I can from my present situation, the curtain behind me will open. Of that I am certain, for even now symbolically it flutters. Sounds, visions even, come distantly to me from directions other than those immediately perceivable. For now, however, I sit with my back to that rather mysterious door. There are also stage directions I still want to add, however, corrections I want to write onto the world's script, and encouragements I still want to shout, hoping that someone will hear. For in my unaccustomed enthusiasm, I would add a heartiness that in life I did not actually possess. I would like to give my staunchest support and express my affection for a world that in life I did not understand, for a life that in life largely escaped me. For then I did not plunge in wholeheartedly, being more morose than I see now the conditions warranted. Yet that critical air with which I examined life and sometimes condemned its terms was also the result of those patterns that are, in life, often hidden. So from my vantage point now, I would like to remove some of the misconceptions about the drama itself that cause so many persons to misread their lines, to stutter, or act without the full knowledge available to them. My own experience is a case in point from which anyone can benefit. First of all, however, a few comments. These may at first appear so obvious that my readers wonder why I bother mentioning them at all. Yet the very simplicity of the following issues is often overlooked in the sometimes murky or ponderous climate of conventional thought. The main point, so easy to forget, is that each person is the hero or heroine in his or her own life. Everything else, all actions, seem to revolve around us personally in life. This is not an illusion, but a fact of metaphysics and psychology as well. We are each, in life, a center, a focus of unique consciousness, possessing our own quirks, talents, characteristic methods of expression, and our own spiritual or psychic tints through which all experience is perceived. That is, we ourselves each stamp or stain our mark upon the world. We are each so unalike that we might be members of different species entirely. So diverse is the nature of our inner realities, so different is one person's soul from another's, one person's challenges, dreams, and intimate contact with life. In society, we must, of course, also acknowledge our similarities and cooperate in civilization's ventures. I do not mean to minimize the vast uniting qualities of the emotions, for example, but only to stress that each person will experience them in his own way, and that one man's love may hold depths and nuances completely alien to the same emotion felt by another. More, each person's vantage point in the universe is his own, a platform for all of his acts that can be possessed by no other, is inviolate and, in an inexplicable fashion, absolute. Monday afternoon, March 21, 1977. It is not merely, as astrologers say, that we are inserted into life from our own time and space slots when time and space intersect in a way that will never happen again and never did before, though that is part of it. More than that, however, the universe prepares itself for our emergence in a certain manner so that when we are ready, we slip through a slot in existence's framework that is tailored for our birth and no others, so that the time is always right. Like a child playing skip rope with others, we know when to leap into the rippling patterns. Yet beyond this, existence couples with itself in such multidimensional ways, multiplies within itself, that no mental or physical characteristics are ever the same, and those that we possess are changing constantly, rippling outward in probable loops, as if instead of one rope. The child was presented with thousands, yet knew precisely when to jump. Once the leap is taken, we are on a platform of our own. It is foolish to try to match one's own step with others, therefore. Yet often I spent a good deal of time seeing where my thoughts fitted into the frameworks that glittered around me. Had I paid more attention to my own footwork, I would have done far better. If others had bound feet, I grew suspicious of my own agility and slowed my pace. My melancholy grew to the extent that I mistrusted my own rhythms and tried to place my intuitive knowledge in contexts smaller than need be, so that I could skip in unison with my fellows. How amusing an image that would be to those who knew me, William James, skipping rope, for despite all my talk about exuberance and clear expression of emotion, indeed, I dragged my feet and found in the dallyings and partying of others the examples of the passionate, emphatic declarations and expression that I so lacked and envied. Ribald gossip of adulteries or even murder amazed and intrigued me. I found it difficult to believe that some people could feel deeply enough to be so driven. Even suicide, which I abhorred as a shameful waste, left me with mixed feelings of regret and envy, for such a person surely, I thought, experienced depression to its limits, where it demanded action of the most violent nature. And I, who could feel compassion at the death of a fly, could never treat myself with such utter lack of it. My depressions left me only weary and indecisive. They seemed to run like black ink beneath the lettered pages of my thoughts, yet I clung to them as one might to old volumes of favorite books, for through them I translated my life's expression. That is, melancholy was often the only emotion I could properly identify in myself, though I could sound passionate enough in the search for truth. This was in a way a second-handed emotion, since nowhere could I feel the same way when presented with any one aspect of nature's magnificence. The sight of a rose, or of the dawn, made me nostalgically aware of my own lacks and those of my fellows. I second-guessed myself at every turn. There are those who considered me a free thinker, but only because they were not aware of the true extent of my thoughts, which went leashed and unexpressed. I could not accept the responsibility for my own intuitive beliefs, or bear to face the fact that what I believed could not be proven. And if I was out of step with my times, I was fashionably out of step, still looking over my scholarly shoulder, courting however reluctantly the approval of the crowd. I gloried in explaining the importance of variety, eccentricity, and the value of seemingly contradictory paths leading to emotional truths. Yet all the while I worried lest my own personal beliefs dull my scientific eyes, and to my colleagues and to the world I presented only those ideas that I felt were respectably enough laundered by objectivity to be acceptable. To my credit, I harangued against the narrow-mindedness of many scientists and religionists alike, and pointed out that much of our accepted knowledge was at best hypothesis, and at worst malarkey. Yet for all of that, The techniques of science and the possibilities of its methods tempted me with the sweetest sirens songs possible. I was impatient at any felt truth that would not fit into science's framework, angry that the soul's properties, it seemed, refused to yield their secrets to sincere scientific inquiry. Tuesday morning, March 22, 1977. Had I danced more to my own tune than I did, I might have contributed more to man's knowledge and bettered my own emotional state considerably. It is difficult for a man not to mirror his times, for he is so tuned in to them that despite his attempts to disentangle himself, they dye his thoughts, and he is everywhere surrounded by their cast, which is shed alike upon all events and endeavors. Yet uncomfortably, perhaps, the more a man finds himself acclaimed by his age, the more certainty can be that his insights are foreshortened. Nor do I mean this necessarily as criticism of others, but in my own case it applies because of my intents, which propelled me beyond my times, yet mirrored me in them. For the rich and famous, and many of the poor alike, and the humble and the sage, are usually quite happily ensconced in their historical periods, following fashions and styles of clothing and thought, applying their talents to the matters at hand, living their days amid families and businesses or professional affairs, and are well suited to their times. And if their concerns lie in a lively interest in people's gossip and the commerce of nations, then such people contribute immeasurably to the fabric of society and life itself. They excel in emotional relationships, and often their creativity goes unnoticed since it is not stated in the arts, but acts in a living context of creative interactions. I think of parents who form each day into a homey psychological canvas of living proportions, painted with tender demonstrations of parental love and affection, tempered by the most artistically applied discipline, which does not hurt but teaches. So while such people may pass unknown to history, the artistry of their ways endures, and their concentration in their times serves them and history well. But if a person's mind is given to philosophy, if the heart questions the head, and the head the heart, if the person seeks the answers to questions that rise like smoke from the fire of daily life, if mind and heart alike are united in their untiring search for what comes before and what after, then there is no recourse but to stand somewhat apart from the times. There is no recourse but to steadfastly refuse that concentration upon daily details that others find so fascinating. For such persons see alike life's flaming patterns and the ghostly ashes left behind, the hearths of one civilization built upon the cold embers of another, and question incessantly. The answers must come from another level that gives meaning to life's daily context, so that the questioner treads a careful line of attending to life and not attending at the same time. He must be involved and not involved. in that involvement, despite my achievements, I tended too much to the opinions of others and ignored many hints that appeared in my own personal experience. Again, intimations of immortality, if you will, shunning them because of their scientific unrespectability. My own existence gave me evidence of the soul's existence. I knew it, but dismissed this as beside the point, since in no way could I produce the scientific proof that, alone, I felt, could demonstrate to others the actuality of such a hypothesis. As scientific technique, that was proper. But as a man I pretended not to know what I knew but could not prove before my fellows. A larger science, however, must take into consideration those inner issues of mind and soul that it has summarily dismissed. For it is not true to say that science ignores such matters. It acts as if they do not exist and bases its theories on the supposition that man has no soul and the universe has no meaning. By taking such an attitude, science is neither objective nor scientific. The main foundations and schools of science have never had an open mind in this respect. Part of the reason for this, of course, lies in science's need for consistency within itself, and again, the human heart is not consistent. The behavior of people is not predictable, and the soul will not stand up to be counted. Serious disadvantages, yet there is no reason why such issues should be ignored completely. Instead, science should and must rise to the challenge and broaden its frontiers, which are too small to contain important elements of human experience. I tried to remake science, and it nearly unmade me, for it undid my enthusiasm until I looked at life's wonders not for themselves, but with an eye out for provable facts. So everywhere the existence of the soul eluded me. Though I myself possessed one, nowhere could I identify it within myself. And when it spoke through inspiration or intuitional insight, it was then that I doubted myself the most, questioned my motives, and lost myself in petty details, while often missing the whole shape or direction of my inspiration. Wednesday morning, March 23, 1977. Now, it is one thing to follow a discipline that deals only with provable facts, and quite another to live a life as if reality consisted of facts only, supposing that life arises from them instead of the other way around. Now, how do you deal with new facts again, those that undermine the old ones? Do you say that reality has changed? If you limit your personality so that your experience conforms to known facts, you not only severely constrict your life, but you threaten to shrink it out of existence. Those who follow such philosophies cannot live with them for long. Inertia overcomes them. Yet from my box seat I see that facts are the props of the dramas, and they change as the actors do, for they emerge to begin with from the actors' minds and conceptions. As ahead of time, so to speak, the actors choose the props that best suit their purposes, then change them as they go along. So they move from one set of facts to another as ordinary actors in a physical production move from one set or room to another. The facts simply serve as a structure upon which, say, the plot is hung, as the given assumptions taken for granted by the actors, or as the rules of the game in which action takes place. Sometimes these facts change drastically. Sometimes they serve for generations. But the actors are alive and real, while the facts are simply the exterior sets, secondary, shifting, to be used and discarded as they serve their purposes. Facts are agreed upon niches in which to place experience, but they have little to do with experience itself, and a person who lives his or her entire life according to facts alone loses a sense of the magnificence of life itself. Moving the props about, juggling the facts, kicking them aside can be a most enlightening endeavor. Therefore, for each time such shiftings occur, lo and behold, the facts give. They are seen to be as artificial as the parlor settings of a popular play, while behind the set's papered walls lies the vaster area in which the props were constructed. If you go backstage, Victorian living rooms and futuristic settings would appear side by side. Facts are the same. Behind them lies the unexplored areas of creativity in which they are constructed to begin with. It is futile to protest the facts, real facts, agree with one another and are consistent, for the furnishings of any good theater set all agree with one another also. It is only when you momentarily look away that you can say, yes, such and such is true in this set, while knowing that in the theater across the street, a different set of equally consistent facts exists. So the greater reality, the greater theater of existence, is one in which the facts or the sets are constructed, one extravagant or creative enough to include vast groups of contradictory facts, each proving true in its own context. The search for God or the validity of the soul must ultimately lead into that realm, and he who tries to prove the soul's existence in the light of the world's accepted facts at any given time is doomed to disappointment. For the facts hide the soul. That is, the facts conform so perfectly to the set of the times and are constructed so cleverly to fit a particular era that they must mask any experience not consistent with them. They must be known for what they are, artificial props, handy and even necessary. They must be gently shifted aside, however, so that the behind-the-scenes activities can be explored. I'm not suggesting that facts be ignored. Indeed, due respect must be given them, for they are important mental conventions, bringing order into mental and physical endeavors. Without their benefit, there could be no punctuality or preciseness in social relationships. Of course, there are those who wonder at the intrinsic value of punctuality and preciseness both, since many societies get along very well by honoring neither. Industrial societies, however, have need for them. Facts should be valued for their practicality. They are worthy facilitators, serving as recognized signposts for travelers and settled populace alike. They are like mental maps, indicating certain kinds of explored terrain, but they are, to that extent, manufactured. They are not the land they describe. To treat them as such is a grave error, for a man may study facts about life for a lifetime, learning little of real value while ignoring the greater dimensions of living and existence that are so poorly indicated in the fact maps themselves. Because man tries to be consistent, often in such limited, unimaginative ways, but is despite himself highly creative, the facts of one discipline will often not agree with those of another, as I mentioned earlier. The wise searcher will study those contradictions, for there the props are weak, the map's flaws show, and there is a chance of seeing through to that more extensive fabric beneath. That fabric lies not only beneath the facts, but beneath man's acceptance of them in his own mind. The mind or soul contains its own prop-making equipment, and once a man finds himself in the process of constructing one set of props, he can experiment with others and realize that he himself is the fact maker and not subordinate. In chapter. I thank you. Aloha.